There is a line buried in one of his songs that almost everyone hears and immediately moves past in a lamb, like I'm Bruce Wayne. 4 words. On the surface, it sounds like every other rapper talking about a car. It sounds like a flex. It sounds like noise. But when you actually stop and study the real life of Kentrell Deshaun Gaulden, the kid from the bottom who became NBA YoungBoy, something shifts. Because that line is not a boast. It is not showing off. It is a biography compressed into 4 words. And here is what will shock you. This man has lived a life that mirrors Bruce Wayne in ways so precise, so structurally exact, that once you see it clearly, you cannot go back to hearing that line as a flex ever again. A boy who lost his father before that relationship ever had a real chance to exist. A man who built an empire entirely on his own architecture, by his own rules, answering to nobody. Someone who moves through 2 completely separate worlds at the same time, the one the public is allowed to see and the one he protects with everything he has. A person the system has knocked down repeatedly, buried under consequences that would have permanently ended most people, and who has gotten back up every single time without asking anyone for help. This is not a rap career retrospective. This is the story of the real-life Bruce Wayne of rap. And by the time we are finished, that line is going to land in a completely different place than it did the first time you heard it. To understand why this comparison reaches so much deeper than a car or a costume, you have to resist starting with the music. You have to start where the real story actually begins, not with the career, but with the man, with the child, with the circumstances that were already arranged against him before he was old enough to understand what arranged against him even meant. Kentrell Deshaun Gaulden was born on October 20th, 1999, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And from the very first page of his life, the world had already decided something about his future. His father was taken by the prison system before Kentrell could build anything real with him. His grandmother stepped in and became the person who raised him. And Baton Rouge, the city that would permanently shape the texture of everything he became, was not a place that offered second chances or rewarded patience. It consistently ranks among the most dangerous cities in America per capita. Generational poverty fused into the infrastructure, violence embedded into the geography. The kind of environment where the direction of your entire life can feel like a decision that was made for you before you were old enough to object to it. Now hold that image and place it directly beside the origin of Bruce Wayne. Every version of that character across every decade, every medium, every adaptation is constructed on the exact same foundation: loss. A child standing in a dark alley watching both parents die in front of him, left there with nothing but grief and a city that seems architecturally designed to swallow him whole. The parallel between Bruce Wayne and Kentrell Gaulden was never going to be a perfect mirror. One is a fictional billionaire from a fictional city. The other is a real human being from a very real and very unforgiving place. But the emotional blueprint underneath both stories is identical. Both were carved by an absence in their earliest years that never fully closed. A wound the world expected to destroy them. A wound that instead became the engine of everything they would build. Psychology tells us consistently that boys who grow up without a stable father figure tend to move in one of 2 directions. They either collapse inward under the weight of that missing presence, or they construct their own internal framework to fill the gap. Their own code, their own understanding of loyalty, their own definition of what it means to actually show up for the people depending on you. YoungBoy chose the second direction. And what makes that remarkable is that he made the choice before he was old enough to recognize it as a choice at all. By the time he reached his early teens, he had already left school in the 9th grade. By 16, he had welcomed his first child into the world, a son named Caden. To anyone observing from the outside, those 2 facts read exactly like a warning label. A dropout, a teenage father, the kind of statistics that systems are built to process and move on from. But the real truth demands that you follow what actually happened next, because the story those numbers seem to predict is not the story that unfolded. At 16, with no father to model fatherhood from, no diploma, no financial safety net, and 0 connections to any industry anywhere, Kentrell Gaulden made a decision that was quiet and private and would eventually become impossible to ignore. He was going to take care of his son. He was going to build something real. The only tool he had was his voice, so he picked it up and he used it. His earliest recordings began surfacing around 2014 and 2015. They were not polished. They were not engineered for a demographic. They sounded like someone pressing record while a wound was still open, the texture of actual fear, the weight of real love, the grain of a life that had been genuinely hard and was not pretending otherwise. And the people who found those recordings heard something inside them that had become almost impossible to find anywhere else. Authenticity. Not the performed kind. Not the kind that gets manufactured in a label boardroom or road-tested in a marketing meeting. The real thing, the kind that cannot be faked because it originates somewhere that no industry system has ever had access to. And listeners felt the difference without being told to. By 2017 and 2018, NBA YoungBoy had quietly become one of the most talked about young artists in the entire country, and the music industry was genuinely struggling to explain how. His streaming numbers were climbing at a pace and consistency that defied the traditional formulas. He was not receiving radio rotation. He was not appearing on late-night television sets. He was not being processed through the standard machinery that the music business uses to construct a star from the outside in. He was doing something the system had not prepared for, going directly to the people, one track at a time, through YouTube and streaming platforms, through a volume of output that felt almost supernatural, and through a gravitational honesty that pulled listeners in and held them there without a single industry push behind it. And this is precisely where the Bruce Wayne architecture becomes impossible to ignore any longer. Because here is what most people fundamentally misunderstand about Bruce Wayne. The thing that makes casual observers miss the entire depth of what that character actually represents. What makes Bruce Wayne legendary is not the suit. It is not the car. It is not even the wealth, and the wealth is staggering. What has made that character endure across decades of storytelling in every medium it has ever touched is the infrastructure underneath everything visible. Wayne Enterprises is not a corporation that simply funds a vigilante. It is a system deliberately constructed, obsessively maintained, that Bruce Wayne engineered to serve his mission, whether he is physically present or not. The Batcave is not a hiding place. It is a facility representing years of compounding investment, architectural thinking, and strategic planning about how to sustain something that is far larger than any single moment or any single night. Bruce Wayne does not merely possess resources. He has built a machine that operates with or without him in the room. YoungBoy, without a mentor handing him a blueprint, without family connections, without anyone explaining how leverage actually works in a corporate system, started constructing the exact same kind of machine. He founded Never Broke Again, his own label, built from nothing. He brought other artists into that structure. He assembled a team around him. And then he did something that artists, twice his age and with 10 times his industry experience, routinely failed to accomplish. He negotiated a deal with Motown Records while keeping Never Broke Again structurally intact inside that arrangement, refusing to allow his label to be dissolved into the larger corporate body above it. That distinction is not a minor contractual footnote. It is the entire difference between two fundamentally different relationships with power. An artist who signs directly to a major label enters as an employee, their catalog, their output, their commercial identity, all of it subject to decisions made by people above them in a structure they do not control. An artist who brings their own label into a major deal enters as a partner, a co-owner with independent infrastructure and real leverage that does not disappear the moment the contract is signed. YoungBoy chose the second structure before most people his age were thinking about what a contract even was. That is not a rap decision. That is a business architecture decision. That is someone who looked at an industry specifically engineered to extract maximum value from artists while returning minimum ownership, and decided that the point was never to get inside the door. The point was to own something permanent once he got there. Bruce Wayne does not work for Gotham. He builds his own operation, funds it independently, and answers to no governing authority above him. YoungBoy constructed the closest real-world equivalent of that autonomy that the modern music industry has produced from someone who began with absolutely nothing behind him. Now the legal story. And it cannot be softened, reframed, or made more comfortable because it is not a separate chapter from who this man is. It is woven directly into the fabric of the full picture. In 2016, YoungBoy faced an attempted murder charge. Those charges were later dropped. In 2017, he served time following a conviction for aggravated assault with a firearm. In 2020, he was arrested in Louisiana on drug and weapon charges while actively filming a music video. And in 2021, federal firearm charges placed an ankle monitor on his leg and confined his movement to a single residence in Salt Lake City, Utah, while federal prosecutors built their case and the clock kept running. Stop. Read that list again slowly. Because the easy response, the lazy, surface-level response, is to scan those entries and arrive at a cautionary tale. A gifted person who repeatedly undermined himself. A talent that could not escape its own trajectory. That is the story that writes itself effortlessly. But the documentary truth is more layered than that and far more interesting. Because what actually happened during those years of peak legal pressure, during the house arrest period, during the stretch when every wall was closing in simultaneously, is not what a single person predicted. He did not slow down. He did not go quiet and wait. He did not treat confinement as a reason to pause the mission. He worked relentlessly, almost compulsively, in a manner that made no logical sense given the circumstances surrounding him. In 2022 alone, with a federal ankle monitor locked onto his leg, confined to a house he was legally prohibited from leaving, NBA YoungBoy released 8 full-length projects. 8. Inside a single calendar year. His creative output during that period stands as one of the most extraordinary sustained streaks in the modern history of recorded music. And every bit of it happened under conditions that most artists would have cited as reasonable justification to produce absolutely nothing. The catalog he built inside that house kept generating streaming revenue, kept deepening the loyalty of an audience that was watching closely, kept laying down the financial and cultural foundation of his brand, one project at a time, from inside walls he could not legally cross. Bruce Wayne has been imprisoned across multiple storylines in the source material. The system, or a villain who outmaneuvered him, has stripped away his physical freedom more than once. And what those stories always reveal is not collapse. Who has outmaneuvered him has stripped away his freedom entirely. And what those stories never show is collapse. What they show every single time is adaptation. The mission does not terminate because the circumstances shifted. It evolves. It reconfigures itself around the new constraints and keeps moving. YoungBoy adapted the exact same way. The house in Utah became the studio. The restriction became the discipline. The ankle monitor became, in a way that is almost too poetic to be accidental, the very thing that held him still long enough to do some of the most significant personal work of his entire life. And this is where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. A turn that changes the complete texture of the Bruce Wayne comparison and elevates it into something that no one writing about this man has fully reckoned with. During his time confined under house arrest in Utah, 2 LDS missionaries knocked on his door. He turned them away the first time. When they came back, he let them in. And what YoungBoy said about that moment in an interview with Billboard is one of the most disarmingly honest things any public figure at his level has said in years. He said he wanted help very badly. He said he needed a friend. He said that when those missionaries arrived at his door carrying nothing, no business angle, no agenda connected to his fame or his money, just their faith and their time, it reached him in a place he was not prepared to be reached. He began meeting with them every single day. He began studying the Book of Mormon. He opened a music video with a verse drawn directly from Scripture, specifically from Alma 36, a passage written about crying out for mercy from inside bitterness and chains. He told Billboard he was planning to be baptized and was waiting only for the ankle monitor to be removed before taking that step. Now hold that next to Bruce Wayne's code, the absolute refusal to kill. The one line he will not cross regardless of the circumstance in front of him, regardless of what it costs him to hold it, regardless of how much easier the mission would be if he simply let that rule go once. That code is not a legal requirement. It is not strategically rational in any conventional framework. In many of the stories built around it, maintaining that code actively makes Batman's mission harder and more dangerous. But it is the line he will not cross, and it is the thing that defines him more completely than the suit, more than the money, more than the darkness of the city he operates in. It is the moral architecture of the character, the thing underneath everything else that makes him what he actually is. YoungBoy, sitting in a house in Utah with a federal ankle monitor locked onto his leg, found his moral architecture. He found it in the Book of Mormon and in the presence of two missionaries who showed up at exactly the right moment. And he did what Bruce Wayne does when something true reaches him. He built it into himself. He made it structural. He wired it into the foundation. He also said something else during this period that deserves to be slowed down and examined carefully, because most people who heard it moved past it without recognizing what was actually being said. He described the music as therapy, but said he cannot stop it even when he wants to. He said he tells himself to wait before releasing something, and then the compulsion overtakes him completely. He called it a disease. And then he said something that stopped everything. The lifestyle is just a big distraction from your real purpose. The lifestyle? A distraction from the real purpose. Sit with that for a moment, because that is the single most Bruce Wayne statement NBA YoungBoy has ever made without once saying the name, because that statement is the entire architecture of that character compressed into one sentence. The Lamborghini is the distraction. The penthouse is the distraction. The tabloid appearances, the Playboy public persona, the image of the wealthy eccentric who moves through the world without apparent consequence, all of it is a front. A carefully maintained surface layer that the world gets to see and react to, while the real thing, the actual mission, happens somewhere private and protected and completely out of view. YoungBoy diagnosed that same dynamic operating inside his own life before he had reached 25 years old. And that level of self-awareness, that precise understanding of the gap between what the public sees and what actually carries weight, is rarer than any streaming number, rarer than any chart position, rarer than any figure attached to a net worth. Now look at the numbers themselves, because the Bruce Wayne comparison demands it, and the numbers are not subtle. YoungBoy has constructed a catalog that ranks among the most remarkable in contemporary hip-hop by any honest measurement. 4 #1 albums on the Billboard, 297 career entries on the Billboard Hot 100. His YouTube presence earned him formal recognition as one of the platform's top music artists by 2019. His streaming royalties generate continuous passive income across Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube, independent of whatever is happening in his personal or legal life at any given moment. And because he controls that output through his own label structure, a meaningful share of that revenue flows directly back into his own infrastructure rather than being absorbed entirely by a corporation, sitting above him in a deal he did not design. His real estate activity tells the exact same story as everything else, and if you miss what it actually reveals, you miss something important about how this man's mind operates. During his house arrest period, YoungBoy built a life in Salt Lake City. That property was later listed for nearly $6 million in 2024, representing a gain of approximately $700,000 on the original investment in under 2 years. Stop and register what that actually is. That is not someone spending money on a lifestyle. That is someone deploying money toward a foundation. Those are two completely different financial behaviors, and most people, including people with far more resources and far more time to figure it out, never learn the distinction. One produces the appearance of wealth. The other produces wealth that compounds while you sleep. Then there is the touring dimension of this story, which communicates something specific and important about the scale of what has been built. From the AI YoungBoy tour in 2017 to the Until Death Call My Name tour in 2018, through the Steel Flexing Still Stepping tour in 2020, all the way to the Make America Slime Again tour that launched in Dallas in September of 2025, live performance has been a consistent, significant, and deliberate revenue stream running underneath everything else throughout his entire career. And when the ankle monitor finally came off and the pardon came through, he did not exhale and take time to recover. He went back on the road immediately, because the machine does not rest when the pressure eases. That is not how you construct something that actually lasts. Wayne Enterprises does not take quarters off, neither does NBA YoungBoy. And then there is the family, which is, in many ways, the most consequential dimension of this entire story and the place where the Bruce Wayne comparison becomes most illuminating and most personal. YoungBoy has 13 confirmed children as of 2026. He became a father for the first time at 16 years old and has never once treated that role as secondary to anything else happening in his life. His children appear in his music videos. He speaks about fatherhood directly and without deflection in interviews. He married Janine Michel in January of 2023 in the middle of the most legally complicated and externally pressured period of his entire life, and has built a committed, structured family with her and their children. He named one of his sons Clemenza, a name pulled directly from The Godfather, and if you understand what that name means inside that story, you understand exactly how YoungBoy thinks about loyalty, about legacy, about what it takes to build a family structure that does not fracture when the outside world applies maximum pressure. Bruce Wayne's family is not built on blood. It is built on chosen loyalty. Alfred, the various Robins he takes in and trains and protects, the allies who become his people not because of genetics, but because of what they have collectively decided to stand for. And what defines that family in every version of the story is the absolute ferocity of his commitment to protecting them. He carries weight alone so that the people he loves do not have to carry it. He makes decisions in the dark that the people closest to him never fully see or understand, because the burden of the mission belongs to him and he will not redistribute it. YoungBoy has spoken about carrying that exact same kind of weight, about wanting to break cycles. Specifically, the cycle of paternal absence that defined his own childhood, about building a reality where his children grow up knowing their father in a way that he never fully got to know his. That is not a talking point rehearsed for a sympathetic interviewer. That is the entire mission underneath the music. And managing a family of this scope, 13 children, multiple households, an enormous and complicated public profile, and serious ongoing legal exposure, all running simultaneously, requires a structural commitment and emotional discipline that most people are never asked to develop at any point in their lives. The legal chapter of this story reached a turning point in 2025 that nobody who had been watching the earlier chapters could have fully predicted. Following a sentencing in 2024 connected to weapons possession, YoungBoy was released to home confinement in March of 2025. And shortly after that, President Trump issued a pardon that lifted his probation conditions entirely. Read that sequence one more time and let it register completely. A child raised by his grandmother in Baton Rouge with his father behind. Prison walls navigated one of the most aggressive and sustained federal legal campaigns directed at any artist of his generation, and emerged from the other side of it holding a presidential pardon. The system attempted to contain him across multiple chapters of his story. It did not succeed in stopping what he was building, not once. And when the legal weight finally lifted, he did exactly what Bruce Wayne does when Gotham gives him a moment to surface. He went back to work. So here is what the complete picture actually shows when you lay every piece of it out and look at it without flinching. NBA YoungBoy has constructed without a blueprint, without inherited wealth, without industry connections, without any of the structural advantages that the music business was designed to reward, something that operates the way Bruce Wayne's operation operates. It generates revenue independently. It has real infrastructure at its foundation rather than borrowed infrastructure controlled by someone else. It is guided by a code that was built through lived experience rather than inherited from anyone. It is protected by a loyalty that runs in every direction simultaneously. And it is driven by a man who understands at a level that most public figures never articulate this clearly, that the things the world can see are not the things that actually carry weight. Bruce Wayne is not a compelling character because he is wealthy. Every story ever written contains wealthy characters. He is compelling because he made a decision, not a convenient one, not a safe one, a singular, costly, defining decision to take the worst thing that ever happened to him and refuse to let it be the last word, to build a purpose out of a wound, to become through discipline and obsession and an unbreakable commitment to the people and the place he loved, something that the world around him actually needed, even when that world did not fully understand or appreciate what he was constructing right in front of it. NBA YoungBoy made that same decision. He made it in Baton Rouge before anyone knew his name. He made it in courtrooms in Louisiana with the system stacked against him. He made it in a house in Utah with a federal ankle monitor locked onto his leg and two missionaries sitting across from him holding a book he had never opened before that moment. He made it in a recording studio somewhere deep in the middle of the night when the compulsion to create would not allow him to sleep, and the only available response was to press record. He made it in the delivery room and at the altar and in every interview where he spoke about his children and what kind of future he is determined to hand them. He made it in the bar in a lamb like I'm Bruce Wayne, That line did not arrive from nowhere. It did not get written because it sounded good over a beat. It came from a man who, somewhere in the middle of everything he was living through, stopped and looked at his own story clearly and recognized what it actually was. Not a rap career, not a legal record, not a net worth figure that fluctuates depending on which publication is doing the calculating. A story. One of the most genuinely extraordinary stories in modern American music. A story about a kid who had every statistical reason to become a cautionary tale and instead became an institution, who moved through two completely separate worlds at the same time without losing either one, who protected what mattered most when protecting it cost him the most, who found his code precisely when the walls were at their tightest, who built his empire at the exact moment the odds said he should not have been able to build anything at all. That is Bruce Wayne. And that without costume, without inherited wealth, without a fictional city to operate in, is NBA YoungBoy. Now there is one more layer to this story that almost nobody discusses, and it is the layer that makes the Bruce Wayne comparison stop feeling like a creative observation and start feeling almost structurally inevitable. Bruce Wayne operates inside a city that does not fully trust him. Gotham has always had its skeptics. Police commissioners who want him in handcuffs, citizens who debate in newspaper editorials and city council chambers whether a vigilante operating outside the law is actually a solution to the city's darkness or simply another symptom of it. Even the people who acknowledge that what he does produces real results carry a persistent discomfort with how he does it. He is too powerful, too unaccountable, too far outside the structures that society depends on to make sense of itself. And he carries that tension every single day without resolution, because resolution was never available to him. He does not get to be universally celebrated. He does not get to be uncomplicated. YoungBoy lives inside the exact same tension, and the parallel here is sharper than most people are willing to sit with. He is one of the most commercially dominant young artists of his entire generation. 4 #1 albums, billions of streams, a fan base whose devotion to him is the kind of loyalty that most artists spend entire careers trying to manufacture and never come close to producing. And yet the conversation surrounding him is never simple. The legal history sits directly beside the artistic legacy in every profile ever written about him. The personal life generates as many headlines as the music does. People who have never pressed play on a single one of his tracks carry fully formed opinions about who he is and what he represents in the culture. He is never permitted to be uncomplicated either. And here is the specific thing that both Bruce Wayne and NBA YoungBoy appear to understand at a level that almost no one around them reaches. The tension is not a problem that gets solved. It is the condition of the work itself. You cannot be the thing that Gotham genuinely needs and simultaneously be the thing that Gotham finds comfortable and easy to categorize. You cannot construct something real out of circumstances that were specifically designed to produce nothing and also be simple for the outside world to process. The complexity is not a side effect of the mission. It is the mission. It is the whole point. YoungBoy has never once attempted to flatten himself into something more palatable for public consumption. He has never issued a carefully worded statement designed to rehabilitate a damaged narrative. He has never reached for a cleaner image or a safer public persona when the legal pressure was at its peak, and the easy play would have been to soften every visible edge. He just kept being exactly and completely what he is: complicated, prolific, loyal, restless, driven, and let the work speak in whatever language it needed to. To whoever was ready to actually hear it, that is exactly what Bruce Wayne does. Not the image management, not the calculated press strategy, not the carefully timed public appearances designed to control a narrative. Just the mission carried out with everything he has, in every condition available to him, regardless of whether the city looking up at the sky approves of the shape of the signal being sent. The music itself is a dimension of this story that demands honest examination, because it is where the parallel becomes most personal and most precise. YoungBoy does not write songs describing a life he wishes he had access to. He does not construct aspirational fiction over a beat and sell it as autobiography. He writes songs that document the life he is actually living in real time, with a degree of emotional transparency that most artists spend their entire careers engineering careful distance from. When he talks about pain in his music, it is because the pain is present and immediate and real. When he talks about loyalty, It is because loyalty is the actual organizing principle of how he moves through every relationship and every decision. When he talks about his children, it is because they are the reason the entire enterprise exists in the first place, not the streaming numbers, not the chart positions, not the label deals. The children. Batman keeps a journal. He documents everything: the investigations, the failures, the moments of growth, the grief that never fully resolves. It is one of the character details that makes him human underneath the armor. The image of the Dark Knight sitting alone in the Batcave in the early hours of the morning, writing down what happened and what it cost him, and what he learned from it, is one of the most quietly powerful recurring images in the entire mythology. YoungBoy does the same thing. He just does it on a track and releases it directly to the world without a filter between the wound and the listener. His discography is a running documentary of a life actively in progress. You can follow the evolution of who he is in real time across the catalog, from the raw, unpolished teenage hunger of the earliest mixtapes, to the spiritual searching that defines the Utah period, to the hard-won steadiness of a man who has survived things that by every reasonable measure should have stopped him, and who is still here, still working, still building without pause. That body of work, and what it reveals about the relationship between art and lived autobiography, is the core of why his audience connects with him in a way that defies conventional industry explanation. They are not simply listening to music. They are watching a life unfold openly in front of them. They are watching someone navigate impossible circumstances in real time and put every part of it on permanent record. That is an act of extraordinary courage, even when, and especially when, it does not look like courage from the outside. Bruce Wayne chose to carry Gotham's weight so that Gotham's people would not have to carry it alone. NBA YoungBoy chose to carry the weight of his own story openly and publicly so that the people listening would know with certainty that they were not alone inside theirs. Both of them took a burden that broke them first and converted it into the reason they keep showing up. And both of them have continued to show up in the dark, in the silence. In the moments when no one was watching, and stopping would have been the easier and more defensible choice, because the mission does not conclude when the circumstances become unbearable. The mission is precisely what you do when the circumstances are at their most unbearable. That is the complete Bruce Wayne, not the gala appearances, not the car, not the costume hanging in a cave. The fact that the costume goes on when everything around it is at its worst. That the mission continues not because conditions are favorable, but because it has to, because the only alternative is letting the darkness take what it came for. And that is the one outcome that is never on the table. For NBA YoungBoy, the ankle monitor was the darkness making its move. The absence of a father was the darkness making its move. The streets of Baton Rouge, the courtrooms of Louisiana, the federal system that processes people who look like him and come from where he comes from with a specific and well-documented efficiency, all of it was the darkness pressing in from every available angle, betting that this particular person would eventually fold under the accumulated weight of it. And every album released from inside a house he was not permitted to leave was the answer. Every child brought into the world and committed to completely was the answer. Every scripture quoted inside a music video was the answer. Every missionary allowed through the front door of that Utah house was the answer. Every tour launched the moment the legal weight finally lifted was the answer. The same answer Bruce Wayne delivers every night he moves through Gotham. Not yet. Not tonight. The mission is not finished. In a lamb like I'm Bruce Wayne. He said it because he knew it was true. Because somewhere inside the building of his life, inside the grief and the grind and the completely unexpected grace of finding faith in a place nobody would have predicted, Kentrell Deshawn. Golden became precisely what that bar described. Not a character. Not a costume. The real thing. A man who took the worst chapters of his story and made them the engine of everything he built, and who is still building, still moving, still refusing to let the darkness have the final word. That is who NBA YoungBoy is. That is why the comparison does not just hold, it deepens every time you look at it directly. And that is why when you hear that line again, it will not land as a flex. It will land as the most accurate thing a man has ever said about himself, compressed into 4 words, delivered over a beat, and left there for anyone paying close enough attention to finally understand.